Hey Dave, how you doing, brother?
Fine, man. Just having my morning coffee here in beautiful Southern Oregon.
Yeah. Are you in a big city? You in a small town? Where you at?
I'm outside of Grants Pass. I'm actually the local municipality here, as such, is called Hugo, and it's about 10 miles up the 5 from Grants Pass. Grants Pass has a population of approximately 36,000 people. So
Okay.
it's a city big enough to get your car fixed and pretty much everything you need. But for the more advanced things, you might need to go next door another 20 miles down the road to Medford, which is a larger city.
Okay.
But
I had a cousin who lived in Medford for a while.
uh, I tell you, I feel like Oregon's been trying to seduce me with the weather, because I came up the coast of California, as you know. And hi, guys, by the way, out there. And thanks for following me up the coast of California. So I came up there, and then you drive through this forest, sort of from Crescent City on the coast, through the forest in a diagonal, and you come in through a place called Cave Junction at the very south of Oregon, and then up into Grants Pass. And it's like you come through there, and it's all cool and nice. It was topped out around 70 the whole way on the coast, and then
Yeah, the coast is great.
suddenly I come into 95-degree heat. But then the next day I woke up and it never got past 80. And I went to Portland, and then I went out to the coast. And by the time I got back here, they're telling me tales about, oh my, when you were gone, it was thousands of degrees here. And now yesterday it was 75 high, gorgeous. So I did a
Yeah.
long hike and
Well, it's
everything.
been pretty nice here actually. It was super hot. It was 108, 106, and then now it's down in the 80s the last couple days. So it's been pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, this one thing about the global climate inferno is it sure doesn't seem to be affecting us too much. I can't recall the last several years have been very temperate summer-wise in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
these narratives don't ever seem to really play out, do they? Um, by the way, I wanted to mention I was talking to one of my sisters yesterday, and she said that she goes, "Is that Jason's wife in that one video?"
Oh yeah.
Uh, and I said, yeah. And she goes, how do you score her?
I had one comment from a guy who was like, "Hey man, I'm from Kentucky too. I just want to say good job on that lady." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I got lucky."
Yeah, so we talked about it a little bit, and I was suggesting that maybe you and she should do that as kind of a regular attraction, because
Yeah.
she said her lines perfectly. It didn't, if
It's
I'm sure you planned it somewhat.
right. Well, it's
Hit a
funny because after I posted the video, the next day she says, "So, how many people commented on my debut?" And I said, "Ah, there's a couple comments." She's like, "What'd
So
they say? What'd they say?"
this is how you get your wife to allow you to continue to have a
I,
YouTube
I
channel.
know, right? Like, I have to make her a part of it.
That's right. Well, what the hell? She is pretty, and she
Yeah.
did a great job with that. So that and that is actually a part of your life, and so you can more accurately represent young married couples certainly than I can.
That's definitely true.
I just tell stories about what happened in the '80s, man.
What part you can remember?
What I can vaguely remember through all the
Yeah.
booze.
So let me ask you. So you're up there in Portland or in the Oregon area.
Hmm.
You went to Portland, right?
I did. Yeah. I think it was Monday.
Okay.
I left out of here early and drove up to Portland. It's about a 3-hour drive, something like that, whatever it was. But I got there right around noon on a Monday,
Okay.
and I parked my van right at the little park. There's a park, and it's divided into 3 square sections. So it's a rectangle like a regular city block
Okay.
that's divided into 3 square segments. And they're all grassy and a lot of trees. And that's where they knocked down the big elk statue, which has been sitting there, unaccosted for decades. And
Yeah.
they knocked down all the statues to, heroic war figures and things like that. And they just effaced everything, had a bunch of fires. And that is directly across the street from the federal courthouse that they have a fence all the way around that federal courthouse and there's about 20 feet or say 15 feet between the fence, which is kind of K-rail concrete, and then a really solid, it's not chain link, it's really solid steel fence above that they installed, which must have cost them a mint to surround that whole building, which is virtually a whole block.
Yeah, I saw a video of them taking it down, like the protesters. I'll call them protesters, vague, loosely, but I saw a video of them like with hammers out there taking one of those down. It was all black, like it's in sections,
Yes.
and so they must have rebuilt it again.
I didn't see the part that was damaged. I did stand up on the K-rail and lean my camera over the top because there were workers down there with water blasters trying to get the paint off the walls of the building, and it's defaced as high as the highest guy could reach above his head with a spray can. So with just constant F word, constant, and the thing that it's just, you look at it and you think this beautiful gem of a city has gone all this time with people of both parties living peacefully together. And I mean, probably the most Republican there is a pretty liberal minded Republican because, you're surrounded by that kind of Oregonian thing. But there used to be this, the last time I remember Portland being really torn asunder by protests of any sort was over logging, and they worked it out like adults. They really did. They ended up doing a lot of sort of selective logging. The clear cuts that you see up in Oregon these days are older clear cuts. They're not recent, and now they cut and replant right away, or else they selectively cut. And they do a lot of tree farms. If you get out into eastern Oregon, you see miles and miles and miles of them growing alder trees or whatever it is that they farm, growing up nice and straight. And that's the stuff, and even pines, that's the stuff we really buy in Home Depot these days, is stuff that comes off a tree farm.
Well, that's a real issue that can actually have a the two groups come together and figure out how to take care of that issue. Right? You got one people who want keep the trees. You got another group that says, hey, we need to make paper. We need to make, logs or whatever. And then they come together and say, hey, let's figure out how to do this. There is no answer for this unless we just give in to Antifa for the current issue.
Yeah, because now, I mean, the presenting issue, the issue that's on the front is racism, and there isn't really any racism to speak of in America. So how do you stamp it out when you can't even find it?
Right.
And
well,
of course, go ahead.
Well, they make it up. Like they make every issue about race, right? So you say something like, oh, I'm gonna pour me a glass of milk. They say, well, milk's white. Why don't you pour chocolate milk? They have
would
to
be
find
Hispanic. That would be Hispanic milk.
It's a dark chocolate milk. No, it's they got to find an issue. And I mean, I said it in a video once, if Martin Luther King's dream would come true, where we only judged each other by the content of our character, the Democrats would never win an election again.
Well, this is true. And so you can't really fight this phony racism. And I don't think anybody really wants to demolish capitalism. I mean, nobody's more against crony capitalism than you.
Right.
I mean, you talk about that all the time. Me too. That's why I like to use the word free enterprise, because I want to try to remind myself and everybody else that unless there really are no thumbs on the scales and deals being made in country clubs, then it's not really free enterprise. It has to include everybody. And that's why you and I land so hard on education all the time, is because I was just reading some more of Thomas Sowell's book. I'm almost done with it. I'm reading it this morning, and he makes the mention that one of the main objections to these charter schools, which score really, really high, particularly in English and math, is because they hit hard on the fundamentals, right?
Hmm.
And the people who are against it say, well, there's lots of other things that people need to learn in life other than English and math. And unless we teach those in the schools, things like, inclusion and weird, societal stuff, social engineering stuff, people won't know that. And then Soul makes the point that, yeah, but if you don't learn math well, there's a enormous range of jobs for which you will not qualify. And if you
Right.
don't speak English, you're unqualified for all the rest of them. I mean, you can't be a foreman on a construction site unless you know math and can properly communicate both with the person you're building the building for and with your workers
That's right.
in coherent sentences. So you're virtually locked out of the world if you don't emphasize those two things, which the charter schools do, and you and I are always talking about.
Well, I think ultimately, um, and when you hear a lot of people talk about it, they'll say, they're intentionally dumbing down society, and we're intentionally making these kids dumb, right? And
Sure seems like it.
it does seem like it, right? And I don't know if the intention is necessarily to dumb down the kids as much as it is to social engineer them to think a certain way for political and people's social wants and whatever. But it sure has the effect of dumbing them down. I mean, when you think about the time when was it probably the 80s when they tried to make, let's make Ebonics actually a class and make that be okay. And it's
Yeah,
like, yeah, okay, let's
that
do
was
that.
like
But
the late 90s.
yeah, so let's talk about, so should we make how rednecks talk the way, let's have that be a class too. I mean, it's so stupid, but it has the effect of setting people back that they pretend to be helping all the time, and they're never helping them.
And it's more than setting them back, it's setting them up. It's
Hmm.
setting them up to fail.
That's
Because
right.
if you believe that your culture, I mean, that's how I always end all my anything to do with the black America. I always end the video saying something like one culture for everybody.
Hmm.
Qualify everybody for this one culture, including every redneck,
That's
including
right.
everybody out of the hollows of Kentucky. I mean, you're from Kentucky,
That's
and
right.
you've probably been to some places like Hazard County, and you talk to some
Sure.
young kid there, and you can barely understand them. Some of the language is so thick, the
Yeah.
local regional dialect, and that kid needs to learn to talk properly too. He also needs to learn math, and we're forsaking him if he doesn't. So
Right.
one standard for all, and that doesn't mean people can't then have their own culture. I mean, rednecks have a kind of culture within a culture that seems to involve trucks with large tires driving through mud and an awful lot of
Four-wheelers.
bass boat talk. And you just turn on country radio for a little while and you get a snapshot of sort of what we might consider to be kind of redneck culture. um,
Yeah.
and
No, my
but
my my
but when
little
they go to
cousin.
their jobs, they can do math, is what I'm saying,
Right, if they learn it, right. But
if they learn it.
there definitely some many white children getting left behind too, right?
There are.
It's just there's so many white children that aren't getting left behind because our population is so big. They get to use the inner cities as, look what look what's happening to blacks. But that also goes back to, now I don't even want to talk about the school unions, but when you look at just the cities are run by Democrats, and you know
Everyone that's having trouble.
they have, if people get shot in the inner city and you want to talk about it, they say no, you can't talk about it. Education's bad, no, you can't talk about it. But if you push them on it, they'll actually try to somehow blame Donald Trump or Republicans, like this thing going on in Portland, one of the most liberal progressive cities in the whole United States. And there were hardly any stories on the news about it, right? And then they send the feds in, and I'm watching the news. The wife turns on the news one night and they say, it was mostly peaceful until the feds showed up. And I was just like, what?
Yeah,
This is
the
the
Fed
story
started it.
now? But that's how they do it.
In other words, until somebody saw something with a federal uniform on and said, Trump's people are here.
That's right.
This is the people that we want to fight against so that they will do something. They will arrest us, and then we can scream fascism.
That's
And
right.
we can then validate this fake Antifa movement. Um, but you're right. let me tell you a quick story. This could take a couple of minutes if this is cool. I want to tell you about a kid that I met in that park while I was up there.
Oh,
So I'm
cool.
walking around. I walked around the neighborhood quite a bit, and I took a few pictures and things like that, which I'll publish later. But I'm coming back through the park toward where I parked my van, and there's this like a big platform made of marble, and it's some sort of memorial. But rather than being a statue, it's sort of a big platform with text on it and stuff. And it
Mhm.
had already been all marked up and ruined by spray paint. And there's this one kid, young black kid, and he's on his hands and knees on top of it, and he's writing some sort of thing with one of those kind of like paint pens that you get in an art supply store.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of that, and he's writing all this stuff. And I walked up to him. I go, dude, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? He had a couple of canned answers, and he got those out of the way first. He said, I'm writing my name on history. And I said, okay, good. And then he goes, and why don't you address me by my name? I'm a person, you know. And I said, okay, got the canned answers. All right, we got that out of the way. First off, I don't know your name. What's your name? And he told me his name's Remy. And I asked him how old he was. He's 26 years old. I introduced myself, told him what I was doing there. And I said, now let's talk. You know, so I said, where is the racism in Portland? What are we talking about here? We had an incident in a far off city where where you may never even traveled. And suddenly this is a racial crisis all across America. What is the problem with all of this? And he tried to give me some examples, and he said, he goes, if you and I were in jail, and he's pointing at his arm, and he's going, if you and I were in jail, I'm marked, you're not marked. So I go, well, I'm telling you, I've been to jail, and it's mostly black dudes, and I was marked.
Mhm.
I got a lot of grief from black guys, and the people warned me going in, watch out,
Sure.
don't carry any, if you're going to have any money with you, make sure you've got, like, if you're bringing $20, and make sure you're bringing 21s so you can hand them out one at a time to all the black dudes that are going to take your money from you. And it came true. So I got involved with the cigarette trade while I was in there, and I was fine. I mean, nobody beat up on me, and it was just a cultural thing. There were fewer white guys in there, so we did have targets on our backs. But I said, have you been to jail? And he said, well, no, but I have a charge against me. They said I was breaking into my mother's house. Do I look like a guy who would break into his mother's house? And I said, dude, I've only known you for 10 minutes, and I've already seen you defacing public property. I mean, how am I supposed to feel certain that you're not the kind of guy who would break into your mother's house? And so I said, why don't you, rather than leaving your name in graffiti among thousands of other people's names and junk and cuss words and things in a place where no one's ever going to see it, why don't you put something beautiful into the world? And he goes, well, I am doing that. I'm a musician. And I go, I'm a musician too. And now we talked about music, right?
Mhm.
And he says, I'm Spotify certified. Are you? And I said, you got me there, brother. I get, you'll probably make your 26 cents way before I do, but we laughed about, you don't get paid for music anymore. And we talked about making beats, and I asked him if he used Ableton, and so he goes, oh, this old white dude knows a couple of things about life. So, and he ended up being a really nice kid.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Once he got done performing the aggrieved Black Lives Matter dude,
Right.
he was just a nice kid from the suburbs and he spoke well, and he was very, good looking. And I told him, I said, dude, if you and an equally qualified, equally charming, equally good looking, presentable, nice guy walk into a job and that other guy's white, you're going to get it 9 times out of 10 in America these days. Celebrate that. What
Yeah.
are you pissed off about?
Go focus on something. Right. He obviously can focus on something. If he's done something with music, he has a focus.
Right.
Now go focus on something, get a job, make something better. It's People are so afraid of responsibility. They feel
I,
like it's a burden, right? To be responsible is a burden, and so many people don't want to be burdened with responsibility that they have to go work a job that they don't like, or they have to make their bed in the morning, or they have to clean the house. One of my friends was saying about how tired she was when she had her first kid. And I was like, yeah, it's tough, man, when you're going on no sleep and all that stuff. And she said, but you know what? You can always do it, because there's a little baby there and there's no option. And
Right.
no matter if you had no sleep, no matter how bad you feel, you got a migraine headache, what it is, you can still go and take care of that baby. You can still go get the things done that you need to get done. And the truth is, we're all so much more capable of there's been times in my life where I was so lazy, and it was like, I can just chill all day. I don't have to worry about anything. I'm gonna, and now I'm working, more than full time at my regular job. I'm doing YouTube. I got the family, and I mean, I'm just nonstop, and I can still do more. I'm tired, but
Right.
you can keep going, man.
Well, I think you're a really good example because you were working for yourself when we first got together,
Mm-hmm.
and you were keeping pretty busy. I mean, the time that we kind of got to know each other by we got to know each other on Facebook, and then I think Jason was casing me a little bit, checking me out, hired me to paint his bathroom and bedroom. So I came up and did that, and then of course we were in the hallway upstairs, and Jason's studio was upstairs at the time, and he's in there doing a mix for somebody that sent you an audio mix, and you were working on that, and that's hard work. It's a lot of
Yeah.
detail work, and I'm in there painting away, and we kept meeting up in the hallway, and we'd start immediately talking, and half an hour later we go, so we realized we had something in common. um, but you had an easier life in a sense at that time, but over time you decided that family was important, particularly important probably to your beloved wife. And then the baby comes along, and now you have an opportunity to get another job, and you weren't planning to, gee, I'm going to have a full-time job here an hour, a year into our YouTube thing, or a year and a half into
Right.
our channel, part of which was on Facebook, the first year of which. But just when we're starting to get some steam, you've got to go off and work a regular guy job, and I get to quit my regular guy job after 35 years,
Yeah.
for which I am really, really grateful. So, and that's hard to do. I mean, like you say, you're
Sure.
working so hard. It's amazing to me that you're able to do any videos at all. And congratulations on the last couple of videos. You're killing it. I need to leave town more often so you can
Yeah. No, I mean,
rebuild the channel.
it's one of those things, you know, some people send me videos occasionally, as they do you. I appreciate it. I think you said it once on a Facebook post. Don't just send me a video link and nothing else. Like, please send a comment, send something. I'm not going to click on any link that is just a link you send me that's supposed to be some video. But
Yeah.
a guy I know on Facebook sent me a couple videos, and people do this, and you watch it and you go like, huh, this needs a broader audience. We need to talk about this. And then that kind of gets me going,
Right.
and that really helped out on my last couple videos. But ultimately, I think sometimes I'm in generally rushing things out and not giving them the space they need, thinking, oh, if I don't talk about it today, it's going to be gone. And that happens. Some of the stuff we've written, it, you write something, you go like, well, it's not quite great, and then 2 days later you go like, well, I can't put it out now, everybody has said everything about it.
Yeah.
But if you make it good, if you take the time to make it good, even if it's been a while, I think it's a much better process. And I think I've slowed that down a little bit, and I think that's helping me out.
Right, and that is something for those of you who don't have YouTube channels, that is really a frustration with us, because we write twice as much as you ever hear anything from. Because
Oh
sometimes it's
yeah.
just, we're working on something, we think we've got a take on it, and then the exact same take gets picked up by Tucker Carlson or something. It's somebody we know has a really wide audience, and we're going to be perceived as just plagiarizing him. or recycling or whatever. And sometimes we
Right.
put something out and someone will go, "Oh man, Candace Owen said the same thing earlier this morning." It's like, oh shit, I don't really follow Candace Owen hour
Right.
by hour to make sure I don't say the same thing she says. But it when you're looking at truths about things and insights about things, the true ones are going to be people. A lot of people are going to come to them,
Hmm.
but we are the way that we consume the world, that we consume the media is so fast that
Yeah.
it's really frustrating.
I wrote that the Kung Flu song, right? That parody. I wrote that, and I think I sent you the lyrics on I was at work and I sent you the lyrics from my phone, and you're like, "Oh, that's great." And then I put it out. I'm thinking it's going to be the best thing ever, and everybody's all like, "Oh yeah, um, what's his name? The Canadian guy,
Crowder.
Crowder." He's like, "Oh yeah, Crowder did that a day ago," and I'm like, "Oh, dang
I
it!"
know, and I felt like going on there and saying, "Well, Jason sent the song to me a day before that,"
I
but
right.
Crowder would say, "But somebody sent me the song a day before that."
Yeah, exactly, right. He was working on it a week before that, right? But yeah, and then I was like, do I put it out there or not? I know I'm going to get that criticism. Oh, somebody else did it, or not in that case, but in other cases, you say, I worked so hard and I wrote this thing, but yeah, it's a weird and with the work, I'm at work going like, oh,
Yeah.
I got a great idea, I'm doing my job, and then I get back in the car and somebody on the radio goes, oh, well, you know what I was thinking this, and you're like, oh, that's exactly my take, don't say it, just shut up right there.
I know. It's heartbreaking, and when I did that thing about the black privilege. You remember I was almost having a psychotic break that week because I wrote this really long, heartfelt piece on it, where I was being really careful with my language and I was trying to really support every point with examples and things. It ended up being like 3,700 words. And I thought, this is going to be the longest video, not only that I've ever done, but maybe that's ever been done. It's going to be, if we'll look at the stats later and people will have watched for 5 minutes and then they fall off when they pass out from boredom or whatever.
Right.
And I sent it to Zane and said, what do you think about this? And he writes back and he goes, oh, my brother, I love you, but you get this is way too long. He goes, maybe you could just do this by point as a list. And I had already, one of the incarnations of this, I had already written that.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, that's kind of a cop out. So, but then when Zane said it was a good idea, because I was actually writing that for a week and rewriting it and throwing it all away and starting all over again. And I was driving myself crazy in COVID isolation. But
Yeah.
then once Zane said that, I said, okay, that validates the list theory. So maybe I'll just be a little more lighthearted and not try to make the definitive statement for all time. Threw it
Hmm.
out there and it did real well.
It did amazingly.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
it
a
was,
little perspective helped.
yeah. And it's funny, you mix funny and truth, and I think it works really well. He said all you got to do is talk crap and make it rhyme, and I mean that just caught me off guard, caught me off guard right away.
Yeah, and of course I knew that was a shorthand thing. I realized that there is some brilliant hip hop. I realized that.
Right, of
And
course.
so, but when you, I don't know, I felt like at that point it made me laugh when I wrote it. And I thought,
Yeah.
put it out there. I'm not, and that's the thing we have to understand in today's media, is that we're not, we're not writing a masterwork for the ages. We're doing something that is, current events entertainment, and we try to get it as real and as insightful and as honest as we possibly can. But I don't think that people are going to be looking at this stuff in 10 years.
Yeah. Well, my last video, it started to be about sports, and then it got into the BLM movement, and then the history of Black Power. And then I was like, I'm not saying anything about Antifa, really. I'm just mentioning them. Do I need to now dive into Antifa and the history in Germany and all this stuff? And it was already a 15-minute video. And I was thinking, oh man, and that's the thing about writing is you write something and you go like, well, I should further explain that point. And then you
Yeah.
write that and you go, yeah, but I also said, collectivism is, should I, further extend the emphasis on collectivism and what that means and what all, systems that entails. And then you go, oh, but then I mentioned socialism, but now do I need to dive into that a little bit? And before you know it, you got all these things. And sometimes you just got to let things go. You just say it. And that's kind of what you did with that first point. You say, you talk crap, make it rhyme. And of course, everybody, like, we had comments, right, that said, are you kidding me? There's some super talented rappers and they're really good. It's a really competitive market. And it's like, of course it's a competitive market. And of course the better ones are going to rise to the top. That's how it works. But don't miss the point, you know?
Right. And really, if you were to compare Lil Wayne to say the body of work of Lil Wayne to your favorite rock band, American rock band. I mean, look at him next to, say, the Allman Brothers or the Grateful Dead, or somebody more recently like the Dave Matthews Band or somebody like that, and you look at the level of musicianship and effort that went into that. Plus, they have a rhyme scheme they have to work with as well.
Sure.
But they have to, because the rhyme scheme is very brutal. You can't just, it's not just couplet, 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 couplet like rap is. It's all kinds of different stuff because it has to fit whatever melody they've already come up with, it and has to go with the rhythm of the melody. So real rock bands, they're also working with rhythm and rhyme.
That's
But they
right.
have melody and harmony and musicianship and all of this stuff to put to, and plus they're units that are sort of in a way family units. So they have all this humanity there. It's not just you on stage and then some guy, oh, here comes Timbaland, he's going to come out and bark some shit, and then he'll go off stage. Yay, that was the big moment of the come on. And when it started being that for it, when every like pop singer would, oh, here's this beautiful pop song, and then it breaks into this and it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Is there any part of music that this damned hip hop doesn't want to invade, and that
Right.
people don't feel they must include in order to be seen as not racist in
I
some
mean,
way?
I think that's a big part of it, right? Everybody felt like they wanted to jump on board and oh, and right here in the middle of this song, this would be a great part for who's hot right now. Like, which
Yes.
rapper is cool right now? We'll get him to do a verse right here, and then it'll be really awesome. And I mean, it's partly money and it's partly, inclusiveness and that stuff, but it sure got old. And I'm a guy, I went to high school in the early 90s, and that was, to me, in a lot of ways, that was when rap kind of reached like big time,
Acceptance.
everyday status. It was everywhere. You go to the high school, in my predominantly white small town of about 7,000 people, at the high school game, you'd hear Guns N' Roses, basketball game, you'd hear Guns N' Roses playing, and then you'd hear some hip hop song playing, and and I mean, it was everywhere,
Right.
right? And I enjoyed it as much as anybody, in the sense that it was cool to listen to, or to know something about it. But boy, it ran its course for me.
And part of the fun of hip hop music for young kids, I think, is one of the things is it's difficult to learn all of those words and then like be able to like bust in, and everyone's sitting around and they're then each know every word and they're right on the beat. And so it's a little bit like a sport when you do that. I mentioned Hazard County earlier. Since we're talking Kentucky again,
Let's do it.
when I was driving through there in 2017, I had come over this hill and down into Hazard County, and it was a crazy hill. I remember one of the signs. I took a picture of the sign. It was like, this fall elect somebody as jailer. They actually, in Hazard County, there's actually, maybe that's like that all in Kentucky.
Yeah,
There's actually a public official office called jailer. And
that's
I thought,
right.
okay, I'm in the right place to see Appalachia now. And I pulled that in there. It was very quiet that day. It was almost dark, and I needed to kind of find my way over into, what was the actual town I was going to? I was going over to
Harlan.
Harlan. That's where I was going. or maybe I was in Harlan County and I was heading over into Hazard.
I think that's what you said. I think it's what you said, but that's in that area.
Yeah,
It's back country.
I was looking for the nearest big city with a Walmart parking lot because I needed a place to stay that night. It was getting a little late, so I pull in and I pulled in and I was looking at my GPS and trying to figure out where I was going and what the best road was. And I was sort of like everywhere out of that was a mountain, right? And then I kind of had a very harrowing mountain and wanted something a little easier. So there's these two kids parked there. I'm in a liquor store parking lot, and the only other car that was there in the parking lot was two white kids, and they were that real raw boned kind of, the skinny face guys, and they like sons of coal miners looking guys with the, you
Mhm.
know what I mean by like,
Right.
cheekbones, a real hollowed out face kind of. They look
Meth
so,
head look almost.
they really had that look. And they are just going at it with the they had hip hop up full blast, and they were just going at it singing along. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
we're in the heart of supposed racist America, and here's two white rednecky looking dudes and black people on the stereo, and these guys have bothered to learn every damn word.
Right.
And so but I finally did manage to I talked to them and they told me the best way out of there. They were very kind. Took me a while to understand their accents though, because they were
Yeah.
seriously deep accents. But
That's funny. I got a kind of a funny story about a Walmart. I went to school. I went to college at Murray State University, and it's a small town in Western Kentucky, and but it's a 15,000 or so uh, attending at one year. But Carrot Top came, and he did a performance there, and he just the whole time he's just making fun of Kentucky, making fun of us, and he's like, you know what? I decided to drive around this town and see what's going on, and the only thing I could find was a Walmart. It's like, that's it, Walmart. You guys got a town, and the only thing you got here is Walmart, and he just kept on Walmart. And what was funny is, about 2 weeks before he got there, it had closed down and it had reopened as a super Walmart. And so he's going on and on about it, and it was the talk of the town, super Walmart. Now they got groceries, and he says Walmart joke like the 10th time, and then it kind of just gets quiet in the auditorium. There's about 2,500 people there, and I just yell, "It's a super Walmart!" And like the place erupted. He falls down on the stage. He's just dying laughing. But yeah, it was hilarious, dude.
the man who made Carrot Top laugh.
It was funny. Yeah, that was like I was getting high fives and in the crowd, and everybody was like, "Oh, that was later on, that was so funny, dude." But yeah, that was our claim to fame. We recently got a super Walmart.
Yeah, and I love Walmart, and it's strange. I developed a kind of love affair for Walmart after a while, and I understand the problem of Walmart in that as it was growing, it was putting a lot of little mom and pop shops out of business,
Sure.
and that definitely happened. And Sears did that a lot before them, and you know, Costco had done the same thing. Home Depot did that to lumber yards, but the cost savings gave every American basically a functional raise
Hmm.
just by saving money. And Americans being what they are, they turned Walmart and Costco into sort of social gathering places. And so many times around the country that I went into Walmarts all over the country, and you'd see people like it'd be like early in the morning and there's a McDonald's attached to the Walmart, or sometimes there's a submarine subway thing. And there's old guys in there, they're sitting around tables drinking coffee in the Walmart McDonald's thing, right? And people are going by and they know, hey, how you doing? And so I mean, humans will make a social hub out of damn near anything.
Yeah.
And if when you think about it, trying to get the best deal from a little hardware store where in order to stay in business, they sell three drills a month, maybe they've got to charge a $10 markup on every one of them. But over at the Walmart or Home Depot, they're making a buck on each one, but they're selling 50 a month. And
Right.
so it's hard to know about these things where there are positives and negatives to all of these things. But
No doubt.
I think it's nice of Walmart that they tend to give back, and in that way they're very responsive by raising their wages up, and there's they've done a lot of things like try to bring organic vegetables into places that want them and try to get those in for a agreeable price. So, you know, what are you gonna do? In general, I kind of loves me some Walmart, because now everywhere I go, there's a Walmart. I feel like a little piece of home. I know how to work Walmart.
That's funny.
I'm good to go.
It's like everybody tunes out at the 15th mention of Walmart. They're like, "Come on, guys."
Yeah, it's our family. So what do you? But you're talking about Antifa, and you did kind of go deep the other day on I've watched two, you know, both all of your videos recently, and I'm trying to keep them. I've been doing so many other things out here. It was the one that was the longer one that you did that was sort of about tuning out of sports, right?
Yeah.
And then you went over into kind of a study of like Antifa or
Is Black
socialism,
Lives Matter and Marxism and communist and
right?
and so on.
Like, um, I think sometimes what we generally do is we kind of mention that in passing, and then try to like go deep on something else. There's something that keeps coming up in videos. Then we tend to go in deep on it, and the comments do inform us as to what people are hungry to hear about. And one thing that people keep saying on my videos is talk about the Second Amendment. And
Mm-hmm.
the truth is that I'm not a guy that thinks about guns and the Second Amendment very much. I mean, I grew up, my dad had guns, but we didn't live in a rural setting.
Mm-hmm.
So we lived in a suburban setting. So we'd have to drive out to the Mojave Desert, and my dad would call it plinking, you know, and he had
Oh,
his
okay.
guns, and he had the one that I would use that he eventually gave me, which was a Remington Target Master 22, big heavy gun. I'd have to rest it on something because I wasn't strong enough to hold it. And he had several guns of his own, and he had his handguns and things like that, and we'd blast the hell out of them, bunch of pop bottles. Um, but I've never, and then in my early 20s, I owned a Ruger Security 6 357 Magnum, and my buddy owned he owned a Smith and Wesson Highway Patrolman. I think it was what it was called, big, heavy-bodied
Mm-hmm.
357 Magnum. And we wore those on holsters when we rode our dirt bikes out in the desert, and we stop and blow the crap out of a cactus and then ride off again. So there, except for one time, his accidentally discharged and blew the rear tire out of my motorcycle. And
Oh,
I had a
no.
really long, they had to come get me in a truck later because I was way the hell and got out of camp, my old Yamaha. But I have never really made that a central focus. And as conservatives, I think if you look at the body of liberal thinking and the body of conservative thinking at this moment, there are these certain they're like hills to die on, right? On each
Mm-hmm.
one. And some people, the reason that they're really a conservative is about the Second Amendment. Some people, it's about right to life. Some people, it's really about free speech. Some people, it's about, and those are the things that they really grind on, that really mean a lot to them. And I just don't feel qualified sometimes to really dig into one of those things that isn't really my bailiwick. And that's why I was really relieved that you took on this, that you have taken over the sports part of things, because you know sports, you
Yeah.
watch sports, you've played sports at the professional level, and not a lot of YouTube people have played sports at the professional level as you have, and you should. I think it's great that you're there. You can talk about that, and
Yeah.
because
Well,
I can't.
I thought it was funny, and I made my placard. You know, when we do a video, we have to make a placard, and then we try to make it, you know, interesting so people want to click on our videos.
What you guys might know as the thumbnail.
Right. And I made the placard for it, and I had LeBron James on there and Anthony Davis. These are like two of the biggest stars in the NBA. They get paid tens of millions of dollars. And Dave's like, "Who are those guys on that picture? Is one of them LeBron James?" And I said, "Yeah, they are." He's like, "Oh, I probably wouldn't notice that right away." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But if you're clicking on it because it's about sports, you know, most people are going to know it that are about sports." But that's one of those things. Sometimes you do a placard and you put it out there and you go like, "Oh, that's interesting," and it's no one's clicking on it. and then you change the placard, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, that's interesting. And it's the same content, it's the same picture in the background, it's just 3 words are different now on the front or something. But
Yeah,
that's
there's sometimes you just don't know. I mean, the one you did before that had a second life, and it has now 225, 35, whatever like that,
something, yeah.
thousand views, which is a real good performance. That had a great thing. You had that graph line on the front,
Yeah,
and it was obviously a cool graphic that you found somewhere and swiped, you
that's
know,
right.
and
That's
because
right.
we're not graphic artists, but and then you were in there just perfectly in it, and it just, I don't know, I just looked at that thing and I go, if I didn't know this guy, I'd click on that anyway.
That's
But the
right.
magic of it is that enough people have begun to know you, recognize you by your face, and then a good placard or a good thumbnail, whatever you want to call it, is just that much easier. And if it's a
Mhm.
topic that they want, they're going to go by it. And it's difficult, as you guys out there in TV land know. We get demonetized a lot, so we have to be really careful with what we say. You know, it's like for my big video, the black privilege video. The actual title of that video is 10 quick examples. Like, what the hell? You know,
Right.
if you don't see the thumbnail with the giant block letters that say black privilege, if you didn't see that, why would you ever click on a video that just said 10 quick examples of
Right.
what? You know,
Right.
but so we have to try to make the visual thing carry some of the topic that we feel might be the sort of controversial part that YouTube might demonetize us for, and then tell a little bit of, then hook them into the rest of the story a little bit in the text,
It's
with
a fine line.
no mention of abortion or guns or war or any of the things that are
No.
uh,
No,
forbidden words.
abortion, guns. That's another thing is, if we want to talk about guns or we want to talk about abortion, that stuff, we know right away,
Will be demonetized.
demonetized, right? And that's partly why I think they do it, is because it squelches a little bit of the voices about it, right? But
Yes.
I also think it's more than that. I don't think they just demonetize it. I think there's a little bit of not suggesting this video as much as other videos and so on. And why wouldn't they? If they demonetize the video, if I wanted to make more money and you do a video that I say no one wants to advertise on this video, why would I try to get everybody to watch that video when some other guy over here made a video that is something I'm advertising on? I would want more people to watch that video. I make more money, he makes more money, everybody's happy. Then no one's making money over here on this video because we're talking about, you know, abortion or guns or whatever. So I think there's something else going on, but I still like to talk about that stuff. I mean, we had that string where I think we had 4 or 5 videos in a row that last month that were all demonetized. And
Yeah, I think that was actually June.
yeah, oh yeah, last month. We're already August. I know it's funny. Everybody talks about how slow 2020 is going, but for me, it's really not going that slowly because I'm working full time. I'm doing this all the time. I'm with the family. For me, my life hasn't slowed down at all. But I, I work sometimes at people's houses, and they'll start talking me up about stuff, and they'll just talk and whatever. I'm like, oh man, I'll be writing something down. I'm like, oh, it's already August 4th. And I'm like, what do you mean already? This year's been forever. And I'm like,
Right.
oh yeah, for most people it has, but for me, I'm going.
The way my brain works, if it can be called working, there, some things seem like really long ago that happened in March or April, and other things that happened 3 years ago seem like just yesterday. And
Yeah, that's
I don't
true.
know if what it is, something to do with the repetitious things. If you're doing the same thing every single day and every day it's filled with stress, that will just embed all kinds of long-term memories into your mind. And I mean, and so that period of time will sound really long. But if you just run into a person every 3 or 4 months and you really like them and you always have a good time with them, then those memories embed. And so when you pull that person up to think about in your mind, you just remember those times you've seen them. And so you're thinking 3 visits ago, and that's a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And it seems like, wow, that was just, it seems like just then, because that was just then in the progression of visits with that person.
Yeah.
It poorly explained, but
You should do a video on this.
Yeah, I already have. It didn't work out. Nobody was interested. Got 2 views. David
I was one
Blaine's
of the
time.
I was one of those views.
I know, but you only watched half. I
I
checked in
know,
the
right?
analytics.
The reason that it only watched for half the video.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, but when I look back at the videos from the COVID period, like I look back at the first one that I did, which was the toilet paper apocalypse, that feels like 2 years ago.
That was 4 months ago.
Yeah, but other things but when I think about the last open mic that I was at, I remember the jokes I was making on stage, and how Mark Yoshimura, the guy who runs the thing, how he and I were cutting up back and forth on stage. I was going there. We were just talking about all the social distancing, and so I went on stage and I had to adjust the microphone, so I was doing it like this, and I was making all this noise with the mic so not to touch it, and everybody was laughing, but that seems like it was a week ago.
Yeah.
Because I can remember every moment of that. And then there's all this dark period in the middle of it that seems like an eternity. So time is pretty strange. But we joked that this thing was going to go on till November, and now we know we really weren't joking.
No,
It's definitely going on till November.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no reason for Democrat politicians to let up. I mean, New York City has already decided that they're not gonna open restaurants again until June of next year. Think about how stupid that is. How can you make a judgment that far in advance?
How can you possibly know? That's almost a year from now.
Right. So, but that's what they're deciding, and then you got Cuomo who's begging rich people to come back to New York because they're taking all their tax money away right now. And he actually said in his I'm begging people. He said, I'll take you out to dinner. It's like, where are you going to take these people out to dinner to, man? But the truth is, he probably can get a place somewhere at a nice restaurant where some rich people are still eating and so on, because they're the people who run society. So they do get to treat
they're the 10% of people that are allowed into the restaurant, while the rest of people have to get to-go orders.
That's right.
But that's one of the temptations we have, Jason and I, as commentators, on whatever we are, sort of backyard garage commentators, whatever we are. One of the great temptations is to predict the future. And one of the few times I've done that correctly, because God knows I've made a lot of videos where I just missed that one again. I should have known not to predict the future politically. But one of the ones I think I got right was when I said, "Will New York itself be a casualty of this virus?" And it seems to be playing out that way. A lot of people are moving out of New York. A lot of people are moving away from the place, and the fear of density will continue for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And New York got it way worse than anybody else. And anybody looking at that goes, there's something intrinsic about New York that allowed this disease to spread. And is it the subways? Is it the everybody, talking rapidly at each other at close quarters? I mean, in New York, they stand a little closer, they talk a little louder, there's a little bit more, emphasis thrown on it, which is like water droplets. And so I think New York is really going to struggle to ever come back. I think almost all the cities that we're looking at have now done such damage to themselves, either through the COVID restrictions or through the George Floyd overreaction. It's one overreaction or the other, that a lot of these cities are just never going to really be what they were again. I mean, who's going to want to go into downtown Portland ever again?
Right.
And around the Justice Center down
and the
there.
people who can get out are going to be the affluent, right? The rich. They're going to be able to get out easily. I mean, Cuomo was talking about, come back from the Hamptons, come back from your vacation home, come back to New York. And those are the first people who are going to leave. That's your biggest tax bracket. They're going to
Right.
leave first, and then things just going to get worse and worse and worse until, then the upper class, and then the middle class, and whoever can get out, and then you end up with a Detroit. You end up with a south side of Chicago, or whatever it might be, and then it's going to be like a cycle.
And the online sellers like Amazon get better and better with overcoming the obstacles to buying certain things online, because the conventional wisdom has always been there's certain stores you need to go into. You need to go into a shoe store, you need to go into this or that store, you need to be able to try on your suit, you need to go into these different places. But the free market keeps addressing all those issues.
Mhm.
Soon there will be, you'll stand in front of your computer with your webcam Zoom setup going like we're using, and you'll turn around and the body will scan you and give perfect measurements of your body,
Sure.
and they'll send you a tailored suit,
Yeah.
and and they'll guarantee it,
Right.
and
And if
you'll
you
get
don't
it.
like it, you get to send it back for free,
You
and
send
they'll
it
send you
back.
a different one. Right.
Exactly, and there will be an Amazon drop-off point as close as any brick and mortar store ever was to you. So you'll go into those places, and they'll be customers always right will be there. They'll keep the lines short because these people are competitors from the word go. I mean, I don't know how anybody looks at somebody like Jeff Bezos and thinks he wants to overthrow capitalism.
Right.
I mean, he just gives money to those people to keep them off his neck so he can go
Right.
ahead and take over the world. This, but the reason to go to New York to work at your job in finance or whatever, or to go to a particular store, or to go to a particular restaurant, well, those restaurants will move out to the suburbs. They'll
Okay.
have, if there was a big, very pricey one in Manhattan, pretty soon there will be a one in Westchester County, and there will be one out on Long Island, and there will be one across the river in New Jersey, in what's the county where I forget what it's called. It starts with a G, but it's the bedroom community,
Hmm.
So, and they'll have one over there, and so they will address this problem. And I just see Manhattan just kind of being a thing of the past, maybe. And here I am predicting shit again. See,
Yeah, I know, right?
it's hard to resist.
Well, let's visit this in like 500 years and see what happened. 50
Oh,
years.
okay, before we shut down, please edit out what I just said.
Yeah, I know, right?
Before we shut down, Jason, because I know you got responsibilities there, and I've got to go see my mom is on the way over because she's 92. That's really why I came up here to Grants Pass, guys. And she's on. My sister's supposed to pick her up and bring her over, and they rolled it back a little bit because you and I were going to do this morning. So it's going to be 10:30. She's going to be here at the front house here, which is where my sister and brother-in-law live. So my other sister is coming from where she lives and picking up my mom and bringing her over. So I'm going to have to go in and visit with her in a little while. So we're coming down to the end of this, is what I'm saying. I'm going to ask you to make a prediction,
Okay.
and then I'll make mine. But the prediction is, so what do you see in rough terms, and take your time, what do you see in rough terms? Who will win the election? What will America look like for 4 years? And then what is likely to happen as a result of a second Trump term or Joe Biden term? If you have any kind of prediction about that you can make in a nutshell.
Well, I said this before. I'm constantly going back and forth between, there's no way Joe Biden can win this election with what I'm seeing. And then I go back, oh, I don't think Trump can do this. Like, I go back and forth, and part of it's the media, part of it's all that stuff. I think it does depend on if he chooses Kamala Harris. If Biden chooses Kamala Harris, it's going to be harder for him. I think Susan Rice is his best bet.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I think
Less baggage, do you think, or
less baggage. She did have the lying about Benghazi and that kind of stuff, but Kamala comes across a little bit crazy. Like, she's trying to be funny. She's almost like a caricature of somebody that wants to be a politician. Susan Rice seems like a down to business kind of person when she talks, and so I think if he chooses her, he'll have a better chance, because I think it's obvious that he can't last 4 years. Biden, his mental state is getting he fluctuates between like laughing like something was the most funniest thing he's ever heard, then to getting mad, then to saying something kind of confusing, and then acting like, oh, you know what, I don't really want to talk about that, I've already said enough. And it's because
And then some, right.
he some so if
And
I'm
then
gonna
being cranky. And
yeah,
then,
right.
yeah,
Because if you're confused, you're cranky, right? Like you
yeah.
ever been woken up and you don't know what's going on and someone's doing something, you're like, dude, stop, what's going on? Hey,
Every
the
morning.
dog's barking, shut the dog up. You got that because you're confused. You're not sure, what's happening. But I'm gonna say that if I had to bet money on it, I'm gonna say Trump's gonna win. And the reason is because enough people are starting to see, I believe, that the Democrats, all these things are happening in Democrat cities. There's enough people starting to see that, just enough, along with the fact that if they debate, Biden's going to sound like the biggest moron in history. And there's going to be people who go, you know what, I'm not voting for Trump, but I'm not voting for this guy. And then they're just going to stay home. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
And so what do you think that, but then won't, let me just jump off what you're saying is, and add a quick thing that I heard yesterday on Bill Whittle, that they said that according to Rasmussen, Trump's support with Black Americans has hit 40%. It's only one poll showing that, but Rasmussen is generally known to be one of the more accurate ones, I think. And if that is true, and that would be up from 16% in 2016, that's an enormous jump.
Yeah.
And if that's true, and Trump is close to carrying half of the Black vote, that means that would reflect that a lot of people who are living in the inner city of all different nationalities would be voting for Trump as the law and order candidate. Because, I mean, you can't expect people to watch their cities go into flames and then trust the people who've been running the city necessarily. So,
well, there's another poll out I saw yesterday too, and it was Gallup, I think, and they were talking about, do we need less police or more police? And blacks and whites were about the same on it. I don't know if it was in the 80% area, but blacks and whites were about the same on wanting more police, not less police.
More police, right? Sure.
Right. And so we're getting so bombarded all day long by the media and the people who are controlling the media with these negative things about Trump. I mean, imagine if what's happening in Portland right now was the KKK doing it for 65 days or whatever.
Sure.
Every night on the news would be like, look at Trump supporters destroying this. They hate black people. Trump's a racist. That would just be nonstop news.
There is no excuse for violence. There is no excuse for vandalism.
That's
this
right.
is appalling.
That's right. And so that's what we're getting. Even once he sends the feds in, they blame him for the violence. But so we're getting that prism all the time. They're telling us this, we're getting the stories told to us from the people who want Joe Biden to win. I mean, Sean King the other day tweeted, I'm gonna reduce my criticism to Biden to once a week because this is bad. And he said, leave him off of TV. Please get him off of the television. So that's a guy who supports him, wants to vote for him, wants him to be president, but doesn't want him to be on TV because that's how bad it looks when he's speaking.
That's a hell of a way to try to run a candidacy.
Right, hiding Joe Biden.
Keep it in secret. Well, my feeling is that I'm hoping they have a virtual debate.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my thinking. I teased this when I was standing on the beach, so I want to just live up to that and explain it quickly what my thinking is. One-on-one, when Trump is just sitting there and there's no crowd, because Trump has the soul of a stand-up comedian, and most of the outrageous things he says in front of large crowds, he says to get a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And and then the more that they react, the more often he says it, just like a comedian, just like a guy who's working a crowd, right?
Mhm.
And so there's all the things that he believes and all the things that his audience believes, but then there's the rougher way of saying it, like we talked about earlier when I said, yeah, talk shit and make it rhyme. You know, it's that everyone laughs, and so now I'd be known for that comment,
Mhm.
right? And so, but if there was no crowd to play to, I probably wouldn't have said that in quite that way. If I was sitting across from somebody and we were discussing culture, I wouldn't say it quite that way.
Right.
And I think that if Trump is sitting there in front of a camera and there's a few of his staff members around and maybe somebody from the nonpartisan election committees making sure that nobody's holding up flashcards and anything like that behind the camera, and Biden is in a similar situation, and they're just seeing each other in the way that you and I are seeing each other right now, I think Trump will be more kind. I think he will be more substantive. He'll land more on his record. He'll talk more about his record. There won't be any crowd there to get a rise out of. There won't be any press out there to get a rise out of. There won't be anybody to troll, sort of.
Mhm.
And so I think he will look like a much kinder and more thoughtful person. And that juxtaposed with Joe Biden, who, even if he's having a very lucid night, will be forced to be making this uncomfortable morphing or transmogrification from Lunchbox Joe into Green New Deal BLM Joe.
Mhm.
And he's going to have to go. He will blow it on every point because that's not who he is. And
That's
what
right.
Donald Trump can be is more who he is, because Donald Trump really is a rather nice person. He's, you see him when people come up to him and ask him a question, and he takes a little time and he puts his arm on him. So he's actually a pretty nice person masquerading as a rough and tumble guy. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Or letting that side of him out because it's more entertaining. Whereas in his heart of heart, he's really a rather nice person. And Joe Biden is really a more moderate Kennedy Democrat type of guy. And that's his base. He's always been the Delaware politician, the retail politician, good with the audience, can talk to a crowd of working people. And he's going to have to completely go over to the woke side, who are the very people that the working class really hates now. We're really,
Yeah.
really deadly sick of those people. And he's going to have to be trying to do this thing or find a middle ground, which doesn't exist.
Right.
And he's going to look really weak. And if his cognitive abilities are what we think they are, or what a lot of us think they are, it's going to be that much harder for him. So I think it's better than a podium, better than two podiums separated by
With the
15
crowd.
feet and half of a crowd, all social distance. I'm for the virtual Zoom debate. I think that will really show Donald Trump, and I think that'll move a lot more people who are on the fence over into Trump camp and go, this guy's really not so bad. He could have taken more shots at Joe than he did, and he didn't take those shots.
Yeah.
Because he'll be looking at Joe's face, and and I think he would be a milder mannered Donald Trump, and
I
that's the
wonder.
thing that bothers moderates about him, is that he's a rough and tumble dude.
Well, there's a lot to hit Biden with his former runs, his plagiarism, his lying about having 3 degrees when he only had 1 degree, and all these things that he's done. There's a lot to hit him for, and then the Ukraine stuff, of course.
Right.
You know, Trump getting impeached over something that Biden's on tape admitting to doing. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if that's going to work in his. I don't know if he can hold himself from saying that stuff, but I do think it's a great point that Biden can't. He's cognitive abilities are so bad. There's no way he can keep it straight. His newfound positions of being a Bernie Democrat, and that's gonna
Right.
hurt him a lot, because if you push him on anything, he really doesn't have. He's a shell of a man at this point, I feel like,
Right.
they want him to be that, because it's scary. They think this is Democrats think this is the best guy that had the best chance of winning. but it's all name recognition. He's connected to Obama, the vice president. He's
Mhm.
been there for a long time. He's good old Joe. Everybody knows Joe. He's a good guy. He's been there so long. Everybody. I think that's
Right.
what they planned on, and I don't think they realized how bad his brains failing him.
Well, I want to do a video on this particular thing, but I mean, as you say, they were so afraid of the other candidates just 6 months ago that they, oh, okay, we got a gay mayor. Let's talk him into out of it. We've got Amy Klobuchar. She doesn't really light up the room. We've got these other people. The DNC really, said let's get behind a known quantity. We really need to beat Trump. Joe Biden's there. Everybody knows him. They know he's not a radical. Let's grab him and present him. Um, and as I had kind of mapped out before, it's fully 40% of the people who were of the likely voters, according to the polls, who were either Warren or Bernie. So those are the same people.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the real socialists, the really European type socialists at the mildest. And so there was already this incredible division. So they thought, okay, we'll pull this together, and so they went with Biden, and they realized, the gap didn't close. So then they closed the gap with COVID, and every Democrat seemed to be on the same side of COVID. It was like they all became Fauci-nistas and even more anti-Trump, and it seemed like the party got pulled together. And then George Floyd got killed, and then the gap opened back up again. I mean, now the gap just went even wider. And this is the thing: you can't. You've got ideological socialists, and you've got old school Kennedy Democrats, and that there's a giant gap between them. And you've got an 80-year-old man, or almost 80-year-old man, who is kind of a stutterer anyway, they say, and also just has no he bears no kind of I'm losing my train of thought here, but he doesn't have any sense of the socialist thing. He can't make that argument, and you'd have to know that argument so well in order to meld it together with the other. So you could say it's going to be a little Green Deal, and it's a little bit hometown America, and here's how they fit together. He can't do that because he doesn't understand socialism. He doesn't understand it at all, and so he can only come from that place, and all of that stuff will seem awkward. And even if he's really on his game that night, that they debate, and his cognitive abilities, he's having a lucid day, he's still going to look like an idiot.
Right.
And he's not going to have anything to sell. There's no,
Right.
they have no platform. They don't know if are we the BLM party? Are we the abolish the police department party? Or are we the sort of Kamala Harris style, yes, we're tough but loving? That's why I think they're going to choose Kamala Harris, by the way, is because I think they'll be looking. I think that Biden's people will see it as, okay, Kamala Harris, she's a black woman. She's a woman of color, right?
She ain't black, but yeah.
She's the one that took it to you at the debate, Joe. She's the one. So you'll look like a super feminist if you, in spite of that, say, hey, we can work together, right? And she has that whiff of justice to her, right? Because the Democrats kind of don't like her as much because she was busting people a lot in California. And so she has that whiff of, she was a prosecutor and all these different things. So there is some sense that she would be a little bit of a law and order person. So I think they're going to choose her. As for who wins, if it's, I just simply don't know. I simply don't know. But if it's Trump, there's going to be 3.5 more years at minimum of utter chaos.
That's right.
We'll probably end up in a depression. We will, fracking will be outlawed. There'll be a lot of different things that, gas prices will go through the roof. A lot of craziness will happen. And we'll probably have, I don't know how bad it'll get. Hopefully the epidemic will die off in the second week of November. But if the Democrats win, I don't see them doing anything other than undoing every gain that Trump made as the first order of business, just going hard on getting rid of all those gains, business is going to be punished terribly. People are just, it's going to be crazy. The cities are going to stay in disrepair. Um, and it'll just be craziness. So that's if the Democrats win.
Mm-hmm.
If
Gonna be
Trump wins,
okay. Go ahead.
did I get confused again?
No, no, you didn't. But it's going to be chaos. It's going to be chaos and disrepair either way.
Either way. But if Trump wins, it's going to be all out war. And if the Democrats win, it's going to be just erosion of all the that we had before. But one way or the other, it seems to me, the ray of light at the end of it is that I think the Democrats are in their end phase. I think that that one way or the other in 4 years, people are just going to have had it up to there
Mm-hmm.
with Democrats, and they're going to have to reinvent themselves as a more centrist party.
Yeah.
Maybe
No,
I'm wrong.
I hope man, it's scary to think how far left so many people on the Democrats now are openly talking. And so, yeah, I think the majority of Americans, like I said, majority of Americans, whether regardless of race, want more police. They want better police force. Is anybody against making police officers better at their job? No, nobody wants to. No one cares. We all want them to do a better job and not have to kill as many people and so on. And
But
ultimately,
these,
the left, the BLM types have taken the party so far left and society so far left and made it commonplace. But I still think there's the 80% of us at home going like, these people are crazy. These people are crazy. It's that silent majority thing, right? We don't want to go out in the street and say, yeah, screw these people, because they're going to say, we're going to get you fired. We're going to, all those things. So everybody just kind of hushes. But
right, the cancel culture,
yeah,
and in general, this chasing woke is it absolutely is no win, because you have to keep going to the next group. You have to keep going, and then you lose the group behind you. I think one of the reasons they've been fighting so hard to get the black vote now is because they had made this big fuss about immigrants, because that was their main push toward Trump hate, is kids in cages and things like that, right? And
mm-hmm.
so, and black Americans are over here going, well, what happened to us? I
Right.
mean, we've been promised for decades that we were going to have improvements here, and our schools still suck, and our culture's falling apart. What's going on with us? Where's the reason that we've been voting for you all these times? And pretty soon, if they run back over to the black vote and blah blah blah, now they forget the Hispanic vote.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I imagine right now a bunch of gays and trans are going, it's been months since anyone even mentioned us. What's going on? And
That's right.
once you get a certain number of woke groups, they don't like each other, and they're vying for the attention of the Democrats at the moment, and there's no way to spread it all out and make them all seem like they are the victims that need to be saved this week. So you end up just bouncing around like a pinball, and there's no way to make that into a cohesive party platform.
Right.
The more woke groups there are, the weirder the platform gets. Whereas with conservatives, it's just a few basic 5 or 10 basic items, and you can
Right.
understand that platform.
And ultimately, Trump has done nothing to hurt any marginalized group, any trans group, any gay group, none of these things. His whole first term has had nothing to do with any of that stuff to hurt anyone like that. Nothing but helping them, really.
Right.
And so they have to keep also making that argument like, oh, Trump did this, or Trump said this, or blame Trump. Everything's blame Trump. The crime bill of 1994 written by Joe Biden, blame Trump for racism. The KKK was made by the Democrats 150 years ago, blame Trump. It's just everything. COVID happens and all the Democratic politicians want the country to shut down. It's Trump's economy now, blame Trump. And
that's
and people I think some people are waking up. A friend of mine the other day, I talked about him in my sports video. He told me, oh, they were talking about this. Why can't you just ignore the Black Lives Matter on the court and watch basketball? And I said, because I know what it means, right? And that's they're shoving it in my face now. And then he called me back right before the day before the video posted. He's like, man, people just don't know what BLM is. tells me, and he's like, I done some research, and I was like, okay, good. And he's like, this is crazy. These people are crazy. And
Yeah.
so he went from going like, it's just a phrase, kind of, and it just means that you care about everybody. But then he went to saying we shouldn't say all lives matter. We shouldn't say Black Lives Matter. We should just say lives matter. Like that was it, because he decided to look up a couple things, and
Yeah.
there's more people who are deciding to do that because information is at our fingertips.
Yeah, but the left doesn't want you to have an all-inclusive thing to say lives matter. That means that's kind of like saying America is one family, regardless of all the victim groups. And plus it would leave the door wide open to saying, well, what about the unborn lives? So we don't want to go there if you're a
Right.
Democrat. When you build your whole party's philosophy around the differences between people while simultaneously saying that these differences must be wiped out somehow, or you must never, nobody is ever allowed to acknowledge the differences as ever amounting to one person being more qualified ever for anything than another person. You have this cognitive dissonance that
Mm-hmm.
you can't overcome. And
Right.
it's really cheered. I'm really cheered to hear because woke is what's going to kill the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Woke. That's the thing.
Well, you can't be
That
woke
word that
enough,
came
right?
out of Maxine Waters' mouth is going to destroy that party. And
Right.
now you see people like Matt Taibbi, who's been a left-wing guy writing for Rolling Stone forever, coming out openly saying he was wrong to be taking such shots at conservatives, that he's still a progressive, but he goes, I was one of the people that disregarded this whole batch of people over on the other side, and I didn't really look into their philosophy, and I didn't really know them
Yeah.
as people. And now look what our party's turned into. It's ridiculous. And he's going on Rogan. He's going on all the shows, some great podcasts that he's, the Dark Horse podcast with Brett Weinstein is particularly illuminating. People should watch that. And you see, these are two men of the left. Weinstein got thrown out of his university position, and his wife did too, because they weren't woke enough.
Mm-hmm.
And Taibbi is coming out and saying, this isn't journalism anymore. This is activism. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I was guilty of it too. And I am sorry that I was. More and more of these intellectuals like Sam Harris, who's never been accused of being a conservative, half of his podcasts these days are against wokeism.
Mm-hmm.
And so where do you run and hide? Because once you allow the like Ryan Long said, it's 20-year-old girls are setting the agenda, and they're doing it on Twitter, basically.
Yeah.
How do you run a country compared to that? So you're going to change law enforcement because its current situation is not convenient to criminals?
Mm-hmm.
Really? It only works for the victims of crime. So therefore we have to make it more, we have to understand the needs of criminals as well, because who are we to judge?
Right.
And so this stuff, it just leads down these paths of madness.
Can't be woke enough, right? You can't be woke enough, and
It's
that's the
impossible.
problem, right? So we'll never get to a point where everybody on that woke side will say, okay, we've made it, we're here
Right.
now, everybody can get along now, we can all everything. It'll never get there, and because
There's
it'll
no
never
end
get
point.
there, right?
There's no end point.
And
Because
because it'll never get there,
when you're battling racism that you now say it's entirely hidden. It's entirely hidden. And it's that much worse because it's entirely hidden. You've
Mhm.
got people seeking out, looking for things that aren't there. And if that becomes their way of life, there's nothing they can't say. They could say, oh, we got a crisis now of invisible dragons attacking the earth in the middle of the night. Everyone has to stay home and turn their lights out.
Mhm.
There's nothing you can't push for when you don't have to prove that there even is the thing that you say you're fighting.
Yeah,
It's pretty nutty.
it's a
Anyway,
nuts
we should
time.
shut this down, brother.
Either way, chaos is going to reign supreme for some more years.
I can't see it happening any other way.
Yeah,
I can't see it
and
happening any other
that's
way.
frustrating. I got a baby, 18 months, and I think, man, what are they going to be teaching her at school and all that stuff, and what's to come? But I'm going to protect her. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know you will. You guys are good parents. And
All right, brother.
anyway,
Well,
Good
go
seeing you.
visit.
We talked way too long.
Yeah, like always.
So maybe we
If
will.
you're still watching the video at this point, thank you for the last person left here. um, so yeah, go hang out with your mom. When you heading back, real quick?
I'm heading back tomorrow,
Okay,
Saturday, right?
okay. And this time you're gonna
Bright and
take the
early,
five.
super
This time
early
you're gonna
morning.
take the 5.
I'm going to take the 5 home, which is a
Okay.
bummer. But I got my air conditioning sort of half-ass fixed the other day in Grants Pass, and I think it'll at least help me to survive going through the hottest parts of California on 5.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks. There's a couple of guys sent me um, contributions, and one of the guys' name was I believe it was William West, Bill West, and I forget the other guy. But these 2 donations came in on a day when I didn't know I was going to stay that night, and I realized, because I was going to Astoria, and I realized, hey, I can just about afford a motel room. So I wanted to thank you guys, and hopefully I got at least one of the names right. But it was just those 2 PayPal donations came in that were to help me with my trip, and
That's awesome.
it made the difference between sleeping in a Walmart in Portland and going ahead all the way out to Astoria and getting a great little motel room for the night. It was a place called the Atomic Inn, and it's all dressed up. The place is all dressed up like a '50s Jetson nightmare, but it was really great. And so we just appreciate you guys in general,
No
and
doubt.
no special things like that are ever asked for or expected. Just that you watch the channel and you share the videos, and you've given us lives that we didn't think we had coming to us.
We really appreciate it, guys.
If anyone's still watching,
I know, right? All
which is
right, Dave. I'll talk to you later.
all right. Talk to you soon, man.
All right, bye.
Bye.